Ms. Brandon Bays will be talking to us on emotions, the gateway to the soul.
Okay. A deep, deep, heartfelt welcome. And first of all, I'd like to start by thanking with all my heart Dr. Karthikeyan and for this vision of wanting to bring all the world's leaders together in spirituality and in health and well-being, and such a beautiful vision in a year where we're ending with the whole Kali Yuga and with the Mayan calendar and opening into this possibility of the unity of world consciousness. And so I thank you with all my heart for all of us joining hearts together in this way. And it's a deep privilege to be here. The work that I do, called The Journey, it was born from my own direct experience from healing from a basketball-sized tumor at the age of 39 years old. And part of the gift of that healing experience is I was really catapulted on a radical healing journey. And in 6.5 weeks' time, this basketball-sized tumor no longer existed without drugs or surgery. And so the work called The Journey is work that takes you on a journey inside your own inner being. And part of the gift of that was I found a way for all to go on our own healing journeys, to not only clear the cell memories that are stored inside and the karmic impressions, the samskaras or the vasanas, but to, in a very direct way, open into the infinite intelligence that these beautiful speakers have been speaking about, this oneness, this love that is your own essence. And I titled this talk, Emotions, the Gateway to the Soul, because it was about 3 months after I healed from this basketball-sized tumor. And I was aware as I went under this really radical, cataclysmic, life-changing healing journey that I had had the spontaneous, direct experience of opening into that infinite intelligence, into the love, into the freedom that is our own essence. But I put out a prayer that somehow I would be guided to find a step-by-step means, a direct means, for all of us in a very real way, not in a theoretical way, not in terms of ideas and notions and concepts, but in a direct experiential way, to open into this infinite presence that is our own essence. And so I put out 3 months later, I was guided. And it was in the most unexpected manner. I was sitting with an enlightened master, and the truth is that I've been sitting with masters since I was 19 years old. From the time I was a little kid, I had this ferocious prayer to find out who I am as a being, what makes us tick as human beings. And it put me on a spiritual path that allowed me to travel all over the world and to immerse myself in the world's great spiritual traditions. And so part of the gift of my own journey was I did find myself at the feet of many of the great masters and soaking in that grace. So it was 3 months after I healed from this basketball-sized tumor. And I was sitting with another master, and we had just sat for meditation. And after meditation, there was satsang, and one woman raised her hand. And she said, you know, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel all this peace that all of you seem to be feeling when I'm feeling tormented. I'm feeling anguish. And the master, she said a radical thing. She said, just don't move. In the core of emotion is the peace that you are seeking. Now, I'd been in the field of mind-body healing my whole adult life, and having been trained and certified and gotten accreditation in so many areas of mind-body healing. And the truth of the matter is, if you go to a medical doctor and you tell a medical doctor that you have anguish and torment, they're going to give you drugs for it. You know, you go to a psychoanalyst, they're going to want to psychoanalyze you to death. You go to a hypnotist, they want to find out what past life created this anguish. You go to an NLP therapist, they want to find out how they can reframe you out of that. If you go to a body worker, they want to find out what's going on in your body chemistry that is causing this anguish. But this master didn't say that she wanted to fix this bad emotion. She said, if you open and go into the core of your worst emotion, there you'll find the peace that you are seeking. Now, I'm sitting there as a therapist in the audience, and I'm thinking, well, she is a master speaking, and still too much outside of me has said the opposite, that we try to fix or clear, change those negative emotions. And so I decided it wasn't true, unless it was true for me in my own direct experience. And so I went home after having been in satsang, and I said to my husband, I'm going to take 5 days, and I'm going to go into silence. And I'm going to pick the emotion that I'm most strongly hooked by, the one that's really, no matter how much work I've done on it, has really got me, and it isn't healing. And I'm going to find out if what this master says is true. And so my husband was going on a business trip, and you know, this is way back in 1992 that this happened, so 20 years ago, and we had answer machines at that time, and I had decided, even though I was in California at the time, I'm a New Yorker, that I would turn off my answering machine and that I wouldn't receive any phone calls from anybody to receive help, to give help, to be there. And the emotion that I decided to work with was a feeling that I always felt that I could almost describe as a drive. A drive that I had to be there for people, to serve them, to lift them up, to do the right thing. Now, this is a lovely thing, to want to help and serve people, but not if you are hooked by it. Not if you are driven by it. And I knew that it had gotten to a point that it was now an unhealthy emotion. Because some 10 years before, I did this grand experiment, this divine experiment, of going into silence for the 5 days. I had been with Anthony Robbins on the road, and I'd been a presenter for him, giving all his living health seminars. And he used to give an 11-day program. And at this 11-day program, you know, I was in charge of all the logistics. I was in charge of being his personal assistant. I was also in charge of all the guest speakers, people like Dr. Deepak Chopra, Dr. John Gray. I was in charge of the ecological day and in charge of all the master trainers. So pretty much at this 11-day event, I would get to bed around 3 or 4 in the morning. I'd shower, I'd pray, I'd meditate, and then I'd go back out and get up and, you know, keep the seminar going. And when we would have a seminar, we would have between 4,000 and 6,000 people coming. Now, anybody can do that for 11 days. But I had been doing it for 11 days off, 11 days, some time off, 11 days, some time off for 10 years. And I was at one event, and I really felt, when I woke up on the Monday morning, deeply fulfilled. I felt like I'd really made a difference to all the people there. A beautiful ecology day. The whole event had run beautifully. I'd been in charge of all the different master trainers, and the event was so liberating and so healing. And by 4 o'clock that afternoon, I got pneumonia. Now, I got pneumonia so severely that I nearly died. And I was in bed for 3 months. And every medical practitioner who came to me, they said the same thing. Brandon, you have repressed exhaustion stored in your cells. If you don't stop, life is going to stop you. Now, of course, this is the kind of words I would have said to any of my clients. But even though, of course, I created more balance in my life, I can remember so strongly feeling the whole time that I was lying in bed, all I could feel was this crushing guilt that I wasn't there to help my children make their dinner for them. I wasn't there to serve my career. I'd let down the thousands, the tens of thousands of students that we had in the teaching. And all I could feel was this crushing guilt. So even though externally, since that time, over that 10 years, before I did the grand divine experiment, I'd created more balance, I knew I was hooked by this drive to have to be there for people, no matter what, to have to, even if a client got me up in the middle of the night, 4 a.m., because they had suicidal depression, still I'd hop out of bed and would have to be there for them. So I decided I would take the master's advice. I would take 5 days and go into silence, and I would go into the core of my worst emotion and see if what she said was true. That in the very core of your strongest emotions, there you will find the peace that you are seeking. And I'd already told my husband I was taking these 5 days in silence and that this divine experiment I was going to try to see if indeed this was true. And as I got ready to turn the answer machine down, I began to panic. And my daughter calls in. She's in an auto accident. What if my husband needs me? He's on the road at a seminar. What if a client needs me? And all this panic started to come up. And I thought, Brandon, this is not the first time you've spent months in silence. I've been here in India at ashrams where I've spent 30 days in silence. And I realized I was panicking because I was going to have to face this worst strong emotion. And so I finally caught myself at my own game, turned the answer machine down, and I went over to sit in this big easy chair that I had in the living room. And I said, okay, what did the master say? She said, just don't move. If you stay still and go into the core of your worst emotion, there you will find the peace that you are seeking. And I thought, okay. I just closed my eyes and I welcomed all this emotion, and all this panic started coming up again, and the feeling, oh my God, all the people I could have helped, should have helped, never was there for. And I thought, I can't do this. I'm going to have to meditate first. And how successful is meditation? Going 1,000,000 miles a minute? Not successful. And I realized that I was using meditation as an escape, as an avoidance strategy. And I caught myself at my own game and decided I was just going to have to face this worst emotion. And so I opened into this feeling of the fear. And truthfully, there came a point where I didn't know if I had the courage to stay in this fear, because I had fear of feeling fear. But I'd made that vow to myself that I wouldn't move. And something stopped fighting the fear. I stopped trying to run away. And some little tiny part of me, the will, just relaxed tiny bit. And I fell into a profound guilt and a feeling of all the people I'd never helped that I could have helped, should have helped, should have been there for. And again, it was a crushing guilt. And again, I didn't even fight that. And I ended up falling into a profound loneliness. And it felt like the entire room was lonely. And I was lonely, and the room was lonely. Loneliness. And it was a loneliness I'd never experienced before. because I was always so busy helping everybody. And I didn't end up fighting this either. And then I fell into, as I let go, into a deep despair. And I thought, you know, if there's no one here helping, and there's no help that's needed, and no help given, then who the hell am I? Do I even exist? And as I asked that question, I fell into this big black field of nothingness. And there was a big black hole in the middle. And I got scared. I didn't know this, but we all have fear of the unknown. I call that nothingness, that blackness, that void, the unknown zone. And so I made myself rigid and I held on for dear life. But there came a point after a long time with the sweat pouring in rivulets down my back that I realized that my will would cave. And some little tiny part of me just opened a tiny bit. And I asked the question, what if I were never to leave this area of hovering over this black nothingness with this black hole? And somehow the thought of staying there was worse than facing whatever might be in that black hole. And so some part of me just surrendered. And I started feeling like everything was dissolving and all form was disappearing. And I fell into a field of omnipresent love, a light that was everywhere, shining in everything. And I opened my eyes to see if I could see this light, only I couldn't see the light, but I could feel it was everywhere. And when I opened and my awareness expanded, I realized that this light, this love, this peace, that the walls were made up of that. And when my awareness expanded even more, I realized the village I was in was made up of that. In fact, as I expanded even more, I realized that the whole universe was made up of this. This wasn't a passing state of meditation since I was 19. This was the direct realization that who I am and who you are is part of the fabric of the universe. That this that is your essence is omnipresent, shining in everything. And the awareness that this that I am, this that is the soul, this that is the essence of who we all are, that it's omnipresent, shining in everywhere, has not left me since that day. Even though the whole drama of life is happening, all the ups and downs that happen in life still happen. And yet it's happening in this vaster context of being. And so I feel that our emotions, this that we've been taught to transcend, to avoid, to reframe, to deny, to push under the carpets, I know directly that in fact your emotions are the gateway to your own soul. And your soul is inviting you to, in a direct way, discover this infinite that is your own essence. And so what my invitation to all of you is to befriend your emotions, to welcome them, to be willing to be open, to go right into the very core of your worst emotions and to open down through the layers until you uncover this radiant, shining diamond that is your own essence. And if I had to say in a nutshell, what is the journey? I once heard that we all came into this life as a radiant, shining diamond, completely whole, absolutely free. But unfortunately, through the course of life's pains and trials, this radiant essence that we are, it gets covered over with a series of shutdowns. And it could be something simple, like you're getting ready to go to school and you're 3 years old and your mother says, come on, come on, come on, dry your tears. And the first shutdown happens where I'm not allowed to feel these emotions. And we shut that down. And when we start shutting down our emotions, we lose access to this diamond that is our own essence. Layer upon layer upon layer of these shutdowns happen. And then when we become adults, we cover the whole mess over with a bright, shiny nail polish. And we present that to the world, and we wonder why people think it is we're so full of, you know. And then if you get to be very lucky, life gives you a wake-up call. And for a moment, you decide to get real. And you crack through that hardened veneer. And you end up opening down through the layers of the lies and the shutdowns. And you end up opening into this infinite field. And you realize it's been there all along. Only we'd identified with the layers that covered it. And so what the journey really is about getting real. It's about clearing out those lies and layers and shutdowns and opening into the infinite love that is your own essence. The freedom you seek is already who you are, and you are this that you've been seeking. Thank you.